All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the Sports File, a 35-year reboot. Last episode I did was back in November, late November, right before Thanksgiving 2024. So it has been, as the kids would say, a minute. We're going on over 2 months, almost 3 at this point. Going to try to get back on schedule here, in all honesty. Doing it weekly is a challenge, and doing it every couple weeks turned out to be a challenge. So I'm going to try to do more longer form kind of topics going forward to experiment a little bit with this podcast that we've got going here. So over the next few days here, I'm actually going to do a couple different topics. I'm going to do the Broncos recap. We'll do one of those, kind of recapping how they kind of turned out in the season. We'll do an NBA trade deadline recap, look at it at a broader level, seeing what, there was a huge shocking trade, I think, earlier this week as well. And then kind of a dirty little hobby passion of mine. We're going to get into WWE, which is wrestling, which is kind of quote-unquote sports entertainment. So we'll kick it off today. Let's do a deep dive into WWE. So I've been a WWE fan since I was a kid. I think it developed. I was trying to remember today. I think it was around 14 or 15 when I really developed this guilty pleasure of watching it. That went on. In that era, you're looking at, this was kind of mid to late 80s, and you had just some huge people that I grew up really rooting for. When you think about who was big back then in the 80s, Hulk Hogan kind of took WWF at the time, which it was known as before it had to rebrand to WWE, kind of took it to the next level. I remember begging my father, can I please watch this thing, Wrestlemania, this big event that they're going to have. And back then it was a pay-per-view where you literally call into your local cable station and you purchase to watch it on your tiny little TV that you had. My dad did it, and I was enthralled. I remember thinking about Hulk Hogan, how much I loved him, Roddy Piper. You had Jesse the Body Ventura. You had Randy Macho Man Savage, Jimmy Snuka. You had Greg the Hammer Valentine, Andre the Giant, Paul, Mr. Wonderful Orndorff. So Ricky Steamboat, can't leave out Ricky Steamboat. He was fantastic, and that's where I became hooked on it. And it really lasted, all through my college career up until my early 20s, where I was really into it as we transitioned, and we had folks like Bret the Hitman Hart that were out there that were just phenomenal. Along with, Roddy Piper still being up there as well. So just a tremendous talent. You also had folks such as Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Razor Ramon, Lex Luger. And this was the infamous era of where Bret the Hitman Hart, they called the Montreal Screwjob, when Vince McMahon, who was running WWE at the time, called in the swerve at the end, and Bret Hart was going to leave for a competing brand called WCW. Didn't want the belt to leave, and so he ordered essentially a pin to happen at the time. Just so we're clear, I'm well aware WWE is fake. It's not real, but it creates great entertainment. When you think about it, it's the patented good guy versus bad guy. And the way I always describe it to people is it's essentially a soap opera for men, right? There's storylines, there's arcs. Some of these storylines can take a couple years to develop. If we look at more recent history, like the Bloodline that's been going on, that's literally taking close to 2 years to get through. With a ton of ups and downs. The good guys win, the bad guys win, and it always comes back around, and then you sort of reset it, right? But so that's really kind of what draws you into WWE. It's more the storylines. It's people on air telling stories, seeing how it evolves, right? That led to the Attitude Era. Now you've got Stone Cold Steve Austin. You've got The Rock coming up. You've got Triple H. Just incredible people on the camera, and some of these are clearly legends today. I kind of took a break at that point. I really wasn't watching it a whole lot as we kind of transitioned to the 2000s. Then my kids really got into it when they were younger. They've since moved on and left me behind still into it. And it kind of brings us up to really current day of where we are. And this is, wrestling right now, I think, is in a great state. You've had Vince McMahon. He had a bunch of issues sexual harassment issues. He was really getting up there in age as well, and the product had become, not only did he have massive legal issues, but the product had become really, really stale and was really kind of tough to watch. In all honesty, the stories were not coherent. They were, he would just drop them out of the blue, and so it never really went anywhere. And what's happened now is you've got Triple H has taken the reins over. He's a chief creative officer for WWE, which is a publicly traded company. It's important to note, we're also too in this new era. WWE averages 3 million views per weekly show. So you have 2 weekly shows. You've got WWE Raw and WWE SmackDown. Raw is on Monday nights. SmackDown's on Friday night. Raw recently went to Netflix, which has become kind of their first weekly live program. It broadcasts anywhere between 2 and 3 hours every Monday night. Raw itself has been the longest running, they call it the longest running episodic, so episodes, each one is an episode because the stories are evolving, right? An episodic television show of all time. It's been on the air since the 90s. And consistently draws in and around 3 million. You're looking at anywhere between 2.5 and 3 million people are watching this. And then you also have what they're calling now, instead of pay-per-views, their premium live events, which are now over on Peacock here in the U.S., Netflix around the world. That's like Wrestlemania. That's Royal Rumble, which just occurred, which is what we're really going to get into here in a minute, a recap of that. You have a Money in the Bank, events like that. And then Friday Night SmackDown, put on by the WWE, is on USA Network, which had Monday Night Raw forever. And so that brings us to current date of Drawn In, and I'm sort of all in. I watch it every Monday night. It records, and I'll either watch it that night or I'll watch it at a later date. WWE was recently purchased or merged together with TKO Group Holdings, and they hold WWE and the UFC run by Dana White, and it's exploded again in popularity. Which brings us up to the Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble is the kickoff. It usually happens in late January, early February. You have this is kind of the kickoff to their Super Bowl, which is Wrestlemania, that happens in April. Royal Rumble, for those out there wondering, where do they hold these things? Well, this was recently held at Lucas Oil Stadium back on Saturday. That's where the Indianapolis Colts play. 70,000 people attended it live. Just an incredible showing. And so the Royal Rumble itself, there's the Royal Rumble. When you think about that match, you've got 30 people. They have a women's Royal Rumble. You have a men's Royal Rumble. You start off with 2 competitors, and then every 2 minutes they introduce a new person. So this show kicked off. This show kicked off with the women's Royal Rumble. The women's wrestling has evolved so much. Women's back in the day when I was a kid, they were managers, and evolved into them kind of being in the ring, then eventually competing. But their matches were brushed aside. They were 60 seconds long. There was just no great characters. They didn't allow them to get on and do quote unquote a promo on the mic, cut a promo. So you never really knew what they were really about. They basically were there because most of them were incredibly beautiful. They were there just to draw eyes, to get more men to watch it, right? So it's evolved now where they had the women's revolution, they called it, where you've got stars back then that moved up, where you think Natalia, you think Nikki and Brie Bella, Stephanie McMahon. Obviously, her father was there, but she's been in the company forever. Was a great bad guy character. So a bad guy in the business is referred to as a heel. A good guy is referred to as a face. So, Women's Royal Rumble started off, who's been red hot this year. You have Liv Morgan has been just incredibly lights out hot right now. She really picked up the mantle the last year and has done a great job. She kicked it off, and then you had, like I said, more entrants arrive along the way. Io Sky is who she competed against at number 2. Some interesting ones. We don't have to go through the entire thing, but interesting ones that made their returns or debuted. they have kind of not their minor league, but they have a division within WWE called NXT. That's their brand. And they had a Roxanne Perez who competed in her third one. She ended up lasting 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 47 seconds, becoming she broke the record for the most time spent in the Royal Rumble. She was great. Incredible athlete in there. You had Jordynne Grace's official debut as a WWE talent. She came in from a competing company called TNA. You had Charlotte Flair, who has been out on injury for over a year. For those that don't say it's real, go talk to Charlotte Flair. She'll let you know the risks that they're taking. She recently literally blew out her knee. She had ACL, MCL, and was out over a year. And then you had the returning Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss got the biggest ovation on the planet. She's my favorite women's wrestler. She's been out of action for 2 years. This was her return. She had a baby, and then finally made her return, and the place absolutely exploded. You can check it out on YouTube if you're interested in the reaction she got. I had posted it to my story on Instagram. Super engaging character, really is amazing on the microphone, which is I look for. Not only are you good in the ring, but can you get on that microphone and suck you in, and can you talk to the audience and either get a reaction, whether it's cheers or the jeers, right, the boos. And she's just phenomenal at that. Charlotte Flair ended up winning the Women's Royal Rumble. What that means is she can now pick the championship to go after at WrestleMania. So the current champions are holding one belt is Rhea Ripley. I think she's the women's undisputed champion. And then the women's heavyweight champion right now is Tiffany Stratton. Both just great characters as well. So Charlotte Flair wins that, she didn't get the best ovation. And then when she debuted on Monday Night Raw, I think people are a little bit tired of Charlotte Flair. She's completely decorated. Her father, I left out, super famous Ric Flair, one of the greatest of all time out there. But she's won the championship 14 times. I think people are really looking to see other people like Tiffany Stratton is a great example, holding it right now. Rhea Ripley, Liv Morgan, Jordynne Grace coming up eventually, Roxanne Perez. Those are all the ones coming up. Had another match. I skipped over this match, the men's tag team. The men's tag team division is just that. You've got, two people are teamed up and they go against two other people, right? And you have to tag to get into the match. I think the tag team division is super, just blah right now. There's no really good teams. There's one team that's sort of interesting, but they have them down at NXT helping develop talent down there. But other than that, it's just kind of a lot of the good teams like the Usos are kind of focusing more on singles. So I don't find it very interesting, so I skipped over it. The next match was Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. These are two big heavyweights. Cody Rhodes right now is the undisputed champion on the men's side. And he went against literally one of my favorite dudes on the men's side. He's probably a top 3 guy for me, Kevin Owens. Arguably, he could be my favorite. It just looks, he's not jacked. He's not anything. He's just this overweight dude that's out there, but he's incredibly athletic, and he plays such a bad guy. They had just a brutal match. It was a ladder match where you have ladders. You got to climb up and grab the championship belt, which Cody ended up doing, but it was just a gruesome match, really. The bumps that they were taking were pretty intense, going off the ladders and what they were doing. And then you have the men's Royal Rumble match. The men's Royal Rumble match was just really, really good. You had a bunch of guys there that were fantastic. Rey Mysterio and Penta kicked it off. These are more in the luchador, which is kind of historically Latin American Mexican descent. You'll see the famous luchador masks that they're wearing. They just had put on a great performance. Chad Gable always impresses. You had Roman Reigns out there, who's, when I talk about my men's favorites, I went through some of my women's favorite being, Alexa on that side right now, Liv, Rhea, Tiffany, Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins. Those are my top 3 right now. And Roman was the leader of this fraction called the Bloodline, and he really picked it up from COVID right through today. So for 3.5 years, he's been running this and leading the company. He's just a phenomenal talent. You had the TNA brought in someone. They have this partnership with WWE, Joe Hendry. He's super interesting. He got a huge ovation. You're also getting the retirement of the great John Cena, so he's doing his retirement tour. He's really focused more now on movies. John was back. I think everybody expected going in, since they've made a big production out of this being John's retirement tour, that this would sort of be, he would win the Men's Royal Rumble. He'd be the chosen one to win it. It came down to Jey Uso, who is beyond over right now. If you watch an event, the crowd eats him up. I mean, he is such over as a face, as a good guy. The reaction, his yeeting, his moving, it's a trip to watch the fans in the stadiums go over this guy. But it came down to Jay and John, and in a completely surprise, which I don't think anybody was expecting, Jay ended up tossing John Cena over the rope, which is what you have to do. And he was last man standing in the ring. John was eliminated. Jay's crowned the winner. He now can go up against either Cody Rhodes or Gunther, who's the other champion. So now we're going to get storylines developing on the road to WrestleMania, as they call it here. So that's been a little bit about wrestling, my guilty pleasure, a Royal Rumble review. I think overall, to wrap it up, I think the women's and men's Royal Rumble were fantastic to watch. Like I said, the tag team wasn't really into. And then the Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens match was great. Pretty good. I mean, it's a commitment watching these premium live events. Royal Rumble started at 4 Mountain Time, which is where I'm at, and it went 4 Mountain Time, and it went right till 8:20. So it's a 4-hour, 20-minute commitment to sit through this. I mean, each of the Rumble matches themselves took about an hour and a half each, so there's 3 hours. And then you've got Phil, you've got promos, and you've got the matches. So anyways, what a return for the Sports File. After taking 2 months off, I decided to leave with a long dive into WWE. So if there's anybody out there who's a fan who doesn't want to admit it, I've now put myself out there, and now you know that I've been watching this for close to 40 years now. Literally 40 years I've been watching this. So I'm sure there's others out there. Anyways, we're going to record another episode. I'm going to try to record it tomorrow. We'll do a Broncos recap, kind of what I thought about Bo Nix and the Broncos season. Clearly, spoiler alert, great for Bo. Great. I think the Broncos far exceeded their expectations. And then we'll do an NBA trade probably early next week, a recap of the NBA now that we're in full-blown. We'll talk a little bit about the Super Bowl as well. So that's been episode number 21 of The Sports File, a 35-year reboot. Please like, subscribe, or leave me a comment wherever you listen to your podcast, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.